Hey everyone, I just want to say hello. It's Christmas. Hello, get it? It's Christmas Eve day, and I'm back at the studio because I haven't painted in a day or two. I've been trying to fight something and I'm winning so far, but you know, just kind of feeling yucky and scratchy throat and that kind of stuff. I've been gargling with salt water, doing the old-fashioned stuff, taking emergency and Tylenol, and I can't take much else. I have the gastric bypass, so I can't take all those different kinds of medicines that a lot of other people can take. But I'm feeling okay so far, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that, you know, I'm going to beat this thing. So I poured this the other day, and it is dry. Here's the back side, and like I said, I usually, on the backs of clocks, I'll usually paint that black, and I leave that kind of till the end of it, but right before I put the clock mechanism on. I wanted to show you, if you can see, do you see those little shiny spots? People ask why you clean or varnish or whatever, clean a canvas or do whatever. These little spots are the silicone which I added to the paint in order to get these lovely cells. And so the whole reason you clean is to get that kind of stuff off. But I'm also going to be painting the UNC logo, which is Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Tar Heels. And yes, you can do a logo as long as you don't mass produce them. You don't have to have special permission. You don't have to do anything. If you're just painting one or two for a friend or whatever, it's no big deal because you're not any threat to that franchise. So what I did was I put this, you know, I ran it through a copier and printed it out from Google Images. Then I took some wide packing tape that you use to wrap up on boxes when you're shipping something, and put several strips across, so this gives it more body. And then what I do is I come in with my scissors and I basically just cut out the outside shape. And what I'm doing is making myself a pattern for my logo. And this is very simple to do, and you can use it to trace. It does not have to be perfect. If I cut over the lines or whatever, you know, you can always fill it in with paint. This is very simple and easy to do for those of you that cannot, you know, draw or freehand. And even I don't try to freehand this. It's just so much easier to just go ahead and print it out and trace it. Then you're more accurate with your proportions and everything. So you can see how simple this is. Voila, it's done. See, then I will put it on here and I will trace around it. I still have these inside areas that I need to do as well. And you know, some logos might have that and some might not. Some are more intricate than others. So it just depends on what logo you're picking. And then I've got like a piece of cardboard here, and I'll just take my razor knife and I'll start it, but I'll still use scissors. I just have more control with scissors than I do with the razor knife. So, you know, I'll make one cut, and then I'll finish off with my scissors, just because I can do it better that way and not go over on my lines. Sometimes it's hard because you're pressing down on the razor, that you sometimes slip up and you cut further than you meant to or whatever. So again, I just use my scissors for the most part. And I'm also going to trace this out onto my clock, and you can use pencil, or I have a white, it's kind of like a chalky pastel pencil. But I wanted to show you first, before we did that, I've got some Dawn dish liquid on my wet paper towel, and I'm going to basically just scrub around and make sure to get that oily residue off. And yes, sometimes a little color comes off on your, I've mixed up some paint that's on my hand here. Sometimes the color comes off, sometimes it doesn't. I have a dry paper towel here. Let me just, so I'm just making sure that it's nice and dry. You can even put your blow dryer on it to help speed up the process or whatever. And then you just check again to make sure you don't have any oily spots. And if you do, you can go back, add some more soapy water. Go back again, dry. Some people use cornstarch. I've got a video showing how to do that, but I don't even use cornstarch or baby powder anymore. I just don't have that much residue that's left in order to fool with all that. It's quite a mess. Okay, so I think I got it. I'm gonna see I have the white pencil, and you also have to strategically place your pattern where you want it to be. I like to also measure from the outskirts of the design to know if I need to shift it, because sometimes eyeballing it is more difficult than you think it is. So sometimes just measuring it instead. So that's about center. Here's my piece of tape under the paper where the wet spot is. That's where the tape is. And I also want to keep in mind the design of my clock that's going to be showing. I want the darkest parts to show. Here's a little bit of light spots, but this looks pretty good. So I'm going to see, and I don't think that's not going to really show up. So let me weight this down. So let me see if this pencil shows. Well, first of all, the pencil lead has to stay out. So you sketch it in. Yeah, that works. So you sketch in the edges of your pattern. And I'll fast forward through this. So it's there. You can't see it, but I can. And I can even go back over it with like a permanent marker, if you just want to make it easier for yourself to see. Because what I'm going to use is kind of a blackish navy to do the outline and a little bit of shading. So if you have a hard time seeing the pencil and you're using a dark enough color, you can use a permanent marker and that'll paint right over that permanent marker. And I don't have a steady hand. This does not have to be perfection. It just gives you the outline for your pattern. Okay. Move all this out of the way. So now you can see maybe better the black outline. So then I took my DecoArt Prussian blue, which is a really deep, kind of dark turquoisey blue, and my black, and I mixed them together And so I have this little mixture in a cup, and there's no Floetrol or anything added to it. It's just straight out paint. And I have me a damp paper towel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just go around it. And then I'm going to take my wet paper towel and just softly blend, mute that color. So it gives like a shaded kind of effect. And because this is, acrylics, it dries fast, so you can only do bits and pieces at a time, because otherwise your paint will dry on you very quickly and you'll have kind of a mess to deal with. So I kind of do it in sections. And it dries pretty quickly, so you barely have time to work with just an inch or two of space. So this paper towel is barely damp. I'm going to use my other one that I cleaned with. But you can't leave any hard edges either. That's the other thing, is you've got to kind of soften your edges as you go. So make it a smaller piece of paper towel. This is like really wet. I'm going to wring it out some. It might be too wet. So I kind of took off too much paint there. So I'm going to try to soften it and blend it again a little bit. So I said you can't go very far. You got to do little sections because it really dries fast. And I guess technically you could put like an acrylic blending medium or something into it to make it, or even put some Floetrol, a dash of Floetrol or something to make it stay wet longer. That's one of the reasons that you put Floetrol in your colors when you're doing pours, is because it extends the drying time. So it gives you more time to play with it, blend, and do pretty effects and that kind of thing. That is one of the reasons for Floetrol. And it also, sometimes creates beautiful cells all by itself as well. So I can't stand sitting around the house and it's very quiet, because my younger son is in another state with his girlfriend, seeing her mother. So we won't even get to see him till after Christmas. And we're going over tomorrow to have Christmas dinner with my daughter-in-law's family and our grandchild who's here, who's visiting from Texas. And so it's just kind of me and Greg today, and he's working from home, so he's working. And I thought, well, I'm going to go into the studio and paint because I'm having withdrawals anyway. So I'm going, after this, I'm going to do a Christmas pour. I think I'm going to do poinsettia. I did something similar to that last year, but not at Christmas time. I just did it. It was just basically a red floral flower, but everybody said it reminded them of a poinsettia. So I thought, well, I'm going to do a big poinsettia pour. But it'll be more of a swipe than it will be a pour, I think, unless I change my mind about how I want to do it. So this doesn't take long to do, really, at all, especially if you make yourself a pattern like this. So I'm back to the one that's not so wet, my paper towel that's not so wet. You don't want a really, really damp paper towel because it will totally take off all the paint instead of just a little bit of it. And you don't want to remove all the black that you just put on. So I have a commission to do 5 or 6 more college logo paintings on a canvas instead of on a clock. I got a commission for those, but they're not for Christmas, so I'll be doing those probably in the next few weeks. And I'll show you how I do that. I'm going to do a pour first on the canvas, let it dry well, and then I'll come back and do the college logos. So I'll definitely be doing a video on how I did that. So technically I could take my tape out that's in the center hole, which is where the clock mechanism goes through, but I'm leaving it for now until I varnish it, because I don't want the varnish running through the hole either. So the key too with this is to make sure and really get the areas that are not covered with the black paint. Make sure you get that nice and clean and get any residue up of that black that you've been wiping off, because you don't want it to look really dirty from the black paint that you've been using. Now I could have made this paint really watercolory looking, like very watery and see-through, and I could have done that instead of leaving the paint like its normal thickness, but I really wanted it to be deep. That's why I left it as dark as I did. So I think I like that. I think what I'm going to do is put a little bit around the edge of this clock just to make it kind of pop a little bit. I didn't do this on the other 2 clocks that I did like this, but I am on this one just to make it a little different. That gives it a little shading, a little shadow effect around the edge as well. And then I'll use black numbers and hands. Like right now I have some black. I have brass ones, but I don't have black. So sometimes they're hard to find, and if I can't find the black ones, I'll just take my brass ones and spray them with black spray paint. So alright. And then I'll take my little permanent Sharpie. Sign it where you can barely see it. Put my blow dryer on it to dry it. I'll go back around one more time in the middle, just to make sure that I get all the shading that's not at the edges. Make sure I get it all wiped away so that you see that nice bright blue. Today I'm going to use 1 coat polyurethane by Minwax, which is water-based. And I have a little water in my cup. And I've got probably more than I need here in this container. But I poured some in there. And I'm just going to stir it up. And I put the water in because this polyurethane thing is super thick. The other thing too with these wooden clocks is you have to prime on both sides before you do your pour, which I did do. And even after you do your pour, the wood will warp sometimes if it's not sealed real well. So like when I put polyurethane on this, it's probably going to warp again, and after that polyurethane dries really, really well, I've got to come back in and wet the back and then set it down on a really flat surface and let it lay back down and settle and get flat again before I can put the black paint on and put the mechanism on it and everything. I've got to make sure it's totally flat. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on kind of like you would resin, just to see if I can get a really, really smooth coat. And I'm going to pour it on. And so that's why I'm doing this, of adding a little bit of water to it. I'm not going to brush it, I'm just going to pour it just to see how it does. Then I'm going to put this on four cups so that it'll be raised up higher. And that's also the way I'll have it drying, is so that you can keep it up higher off your surface with, push pins or on something to hold it, and then you have control about running your fingers under the edge and making sure that the drips don't puddle into little droplets, that kind of thing. Kind of the same thing that you would do if you were using resin. You would just continually kind of run your fingers as it's kind of drying to get those drips away. I'm going to add just a little bit more water to this. I probably didn't even add enough water to it. But I'm going to tilt it and all just like I would pouring or resin or anything like that. Trying to get that middle totally covered where the tape was, and then just tilt. And then you can feel with your fingers if it's nice and slick around the edges, then you know that you've pretty much got it covered. And I'm going to take a heat torch and just very quickly, it's about out of butane. Let me try my heat gun. That didn't work. I got to fill that up. That'll help pop bubbles, and also I've got like a skewer here. There's one. If you can visually see any, just make sure they're popped. And when they pop, they'll settle back down again. That's the cool part about it. I think that looks pretty even. So like I said, it is cloudy looking, and that's true of Minwax polyacrylic and this one coat, which is even way thicker. And like Liquitex High Gloss Varnish, which is usually my varnish of choice, it's not as thick. But it is still a little bit milky, but it really thins out and dries fairly quickly. So I'm just checking it out in the light. I had a little fleck of black or something there. But I think that looks pretty good. So, as you can see, it's pretty smooth and glossy. And I'm going to let it dry, and probably in a few hours or so, it'll look decent enough to where I can maybe come back and show you how it looks. So maybe after I finish my next pour, I can pop in and show you how this looks. So I'm going to take this over to the drying table. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Check out all the links below. There's all kinds: PayPal, Patreon, my website. Find me on Instagram. There's the Amazon link with all the recommendations. There's an Artiso link for Christmas bundles. And if you use Sandra Lett too at checkout, you'll get another 10% off. So check those out, because I love the Artiso paints. So I'll see you next time. Have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. Thank you.